What brutal karma? Did a bully face the moment their target finally spoke up? Story 1. I was the numbers girl in our department. Quiet, efficient, invisible. My manager, Brad, liked it that way. He'd dump impossible deadlines on me, scream in front of everyone if a comma was out of place, then present my work as his in executive meetings. For 3 years, I took it. I needed the paycheck, I needed the health insurance, and I was terrified of being blacklisted in our niche industry. Then the new CFO came in. She asked for a full breakdown of departmental budgets for a big board meeting. Brad told me, in front of everyone, "Do the draft, I'll fix it so it doesn't look like a college project." Everyone laughed. I stayed late for a week straight, getting everything perfect. The night before the presentation, I caught him in my office, copying my file to his USB. He sneered, "Relax, you're not exactly presentation material." What he didn't know, I'd already noticed something dirty months earlier. Some vendor invoices didn't match. Money was being reallocated in weird ways. When I asked, he told me to learn how business works and not ask stupid questions. So this time, I saved 2 versions. The one I put on the shared drive, his version, had every sketchy transaction clearly highlighted and summarized on a final tab labeled Unexplained Variances, Requires Management Justification. The one on my personal drive was the sanitized version, in case I was wrong and just crazy. At the board meeting, I sat against the wall while Brad plugged in his laptop, smug as ever. He started presenting his workbook from the shared drive. Everything was fine until one of the board members clicked the last tab. Silence. Then, "Brad, can you explain these unexplained variances and why over 180K seems to be routed through a vendor that shares your home address?" I watched the color drain out of his face. He stammered something about, "My junior made a draft." The CFO turned to me. "You prepared this, right?" My hands were shaking, but I finally spoke up. "Yes. I asked about those transactions months ago and was told not to question them. I kept backups of the original invoices if you need them." That was it. Years of swallowing insults compressed into one calm sentence. Security walked him out by the end of the week. The vendor was a shell LLC. There's an ongoing investigation. The company offered me his position. I took a different job at a competitor instead. The best part? My new boss introduced me as the woman whose spreadsheet took down a VP. Brad used to say I'd never be more than a back-office nobody. Funny how loud a nobody can be once she finally decides to talk. Story 2. I was 14 when I realized my dad was a bully. To everyone else, he was the charming, successful guy who fought so hard to be in our lives. To us, me and my little sister, he was the guy who called mom crazy if she asked for child support on time and called me ungrateful if I wanted to stay home instead of going to his apartment to watch him drink and complain. He'd spend most of our weekends trashing mom. "She's manipulating you. She wants to keep you poor. She's trying to turn you against me." If we didn't agree enthusiastically, he'd sulk and slam doors. Mom rarely said anything bad about him. She just quietly worked 2 jobs, packed our lunches, and kept every receipt. Then he sued for full custody. His story was that mom was unstable, alienating us, and wasting the child support on herself. He wanted what's best for the kids. He cried in court, actual tears. I remember the judge asking if we'd be willing to speak. My dad squeezed my hand beforehand and whispered, "Remember who's always been there for you." That was the moment something snapped. On the stand, the judge asked how often we saw Dad. I told the truth. "Every other weekend, unless he cancels." Which is a lot. "Why does he cancel?" the judge asked. "Because he has dates, or he's hungover. Sometimes he forgets to pick us up." Dad's lawyer tried to object, but the judge let me continue. I told him about mom working late but still showing up to every parent-teacher meeting, while Dad never did. I told them about the time he screamed at my sister for crying when she spilled his beer. I told them how he'd tell us mom was stealing his money, then show us his new watch. Then I said the thing I'd been afraid to say for years. He calls her crazy all the time. He calls me that when I disagree. I don't feel safe living with him full-time. I want to stay with my mom. My sister, who was only 10, quietly repeated, "Me too." The room went quiet. My dad's face twisted, and he actually tried to interrupt, saying, "They don't mean that. Their mother put them up to this." The judge snapped at him to sit down. Mom started crying for the first time that day, silently, into a tissue. In the end, custody stayed with mom. Dad's time was reduced, and he had to do parenting classes and therapy. What really hit him wasn't just losing the case. It was when the judge said, "Mr. R, if your children's words are any indication, the problem is not their mother's influence. It's yours." He always wanted to control the narrative. Years of gaslighting, guilt trips, and subtle digs, all undone by 2 kids who were just tired enough to finally tell the truth. We drove home in silence, then Mom whispered, "I'm so proud of you." I realized the person he'd tried to convince us was crazy was the only one who'd ever actually been on our side. Story 3, I wasn't the target. I was the bystander who kept pretending not to see. Lily was the quiet girl in our class. Oversized hoodies, headphones, always reading. Tara was the queen bee. TikTok famous, cheer captain, mean as hell if she smelled weakness. For years, Tara chipped away at Lily. Little comments about her clothes, whispers about her smelling weird, passing her in the hallway and accidentally bumping her books. If Lily flinched or blushed, Tara would smirk like she'd scored. Everyone saw it. Most of us did nothing, including me. Then, our school announced this big Student Kindness Initiative assembly. The principal asked Tara to give a speech about anti-bullying because of her influence. That's how disconnected adults can be. Day of the assembly, the whole school packed into the gym. Tara strutted up onto the stage in full cheer uniform, big smile, perfect hair. She started reading this speech about uplifting each other and how words can hurt. My group chat with some classmates lit up in my pocket. Someone sent screenshots. It was from a private Snapchat group Tara had made. Lily's fan club, except it was just dozens of messages making fun of Lily. Photos of her at her locker, zoomed in on her body. Voice notes mocking her stutter when she had to present in class. The most recent message, "Can't wait to pretend to care about bullying today, lol." Then someone added a new member to the group. Lily. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then a new message popped up. From Lily. "Cool speech, Tara. Mind if I share your rehearsal notes with the class?" I felt my stomach drop. At that exact moment, Lily stood up in the bleachers. She walked down toward the front, phone in hand, trembling but steady. She turned to the principal and asked, loud enough to echo, "Can I show something before she finishes?" The principal, confused but wanting to be supportive of student voices, handed her the mic. Lily connected her phone to the projector like we do for class presentations, and there it was on the huge screen. The group chat. Names, photos, timestamps. Tara's username at the top of half the messages. The gym was dead silent except for a few gasps. Lily didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just read one of Tara's recent messages in a flat voice. Nobody would even notice if she disappeared. "She's basically a ghost already." Then she said, "I notice. Every single time. And I'm tired of pretending it doesn't hurt." The principal shut the assembly down immediately. Tara tried to blame it on a joke taken out of context and other people posting on her phone. But it didn't matter. Screenshots were already spreading everywhere. Her sponsors dropped her. Cheer captain? Gone. Her kindness ambassador role? Gone. Parents complained to the district. Teachers who'd brushed Lily off suddenly wanted meetings. The next week, Lily came to school with her shoulders a little straighter. I finally sat next to her at lunch and apologized for not saying anything sooner. She shrugged. "You did now." Tara always thought she controlled the narrative because she controlled the whispers. She forgot that in 2025, whispers have receipts. Story 4. My older sister, Mara, has always been the star. Prettier, louder, more charming. I was the quiet, chubby one. That was her nickname for me. Chunk. She used it in front of relatives so often they thought it was cute. If I protested, she'd laugh. "Relax, it's just a joke. Don't be so sensitive." She stole friends, boyfriends, even once a job lead I told her about. Our parents brushed it off as sibling rivalry. I learned to keep my wins small and private. Then I got engaged. My fiancé, Daniel, is kind of the opposite of Mara. Calm, steady, thoughtful. When he proposed, Mara hugged me and said, "Finally, someone loves you enough to overlook all this." She gestured vaguely at my body. I laughed it off like always. Kept the peace. Let her be my maid of honor because saying no would cause more drama than it would solve. Wedding planning was a nightmare. Constant digs. "You sure you want that dress? It doesn't hide much. Maybe do a darker lighting scheme. More flattering." She tried to take over everything, from decor to guest list. The night before the wedding, at the rehearsal dinner, she got hammered and started loudly joking about how she never thought I'd be the first sister to get married. People laughed. I saw Daniel's jaw tighten. That night in the hotel, I broke down. I told him years' worth of stuff I'd minimized. He listened quietly, then said, "You know you don't have to keep letting her do this, right?" The next day, after the ceremony, it was time for speeches. My dad went first, sweet and emotional. Then Mara took the mic. She started with the usual backhanded compliments. I used to worry no one would see how amazing my sister is under all the insecurity, but thankfully Daniel is a patient man. More laughter. Then she said, "And remember, Dan, if she gets too annoying, you know who to call." She winked at him. The crowd oohed. I felt my stomach twist. She'd always flirted with my boyfriends as a joke, but hearing that at my own wedding? I saw Daniel stand up and walk over. He gently took the mic from her. Actually, he said, his voice calm but carrying across the room. Since we're sharing, there's something I'd like to say. He pulled out his phone. Last night after the rehearsal dinner, Mara texted me. Again. He clicked a few times. She's been doing this for months. I've ignored it. But I think my wife deserves to hear. He read. Dramatic pause then. If you ever get tired of playing house with my little sister, you know I'd make things a lot more fun. No one has to know. The room went absolutely silent. Mara went pale. That's taken out of, he scrolled. Or this one. Honestly, you and I are a better match. I've always had a thing for you. Don't tell Chunk. My mom gasped. My dad looked like he'd been punched. Daniel turned to me. I didn't respond to any of it because I love you. But I also love you too much to let her keep treating you like this with everyone thinking it's harmless. He handed me the phone and the mic. I'd never spoken against her in front of the family. Ever. My hands shook, but I looked at her and said clearly, I'm done being your punchline. You don't get access to me or my marriage until you get serious help. And if anyone here thinks this is just sister drama, feel free to leave with her. Mara started crying about being embarrassed at my wedding. She tried to storm out, expecting my parents to follow. They didn't. Instead, my dad stood up, went to the DJ, and told him to start the music. People surrounded us on the dance floor. Mara left alone, mascara running. For once, I wasn't the one shrinking myself to keep her comfortable. The bully who'd spent a lifetime calling me Chunk finally got called something she'd never heard from me before. No. Story 5. When I bought my house, everyone warned me about Carol, the HOA president. Power tripping, they said. Loves fines more than her own kids. I figured they were exaggerating. Then I met her. She welcomed me with a printed list of common violations and subtle comments about how we prefer people who keep up appearances. I shrugged it off. Her real target was my next-door neighbor, Mr. Alvarez. Widower. Late 70s. Sweetest guy you could imagine. He'd bring me fresh oranges from his yard and tell me stories about when the neighborhood was all farmland. Carol hassled him constantly. Letter after letter. His grass was 1.5 inches too long. His trash can stayed out 20 minutes past the allowed time. His front door color was non-compliant. It was beige. She'd show up and talk to him like he was a naughty child. He always just nodded and said, "Yes, ma'am, I'll take care of it," then shuffle away, shoulders hunched. One afternoon, I overheard her snapping at him in his driveway. If you can't keep up, maybe this isn't the right community for you. We have standards. He apologized for being old. Something about that hit a nerve. I work in IT security. My day job is basically catching people who think rules only apply to others. I offered to help him with the tech stuff. We installed a smart doorbell and a couple of discrete cameras facing his yard and the shared sidewalk, just to keep an eye on things. Within a month, we had footage of Carol doing all kinds of fun things. Marching onto his property with a tape measure at 6 a.m., moving his trash cans closer to the street, then taking photos as evidence, saying on camera, "If I push him hard enough with fines, he'll sell." We need younger blood in here. The breaking point came when she tried to levy a $500 fine for unauthorized modifications because of the cameras. She called an emergency HOA meeting, inviting half the neighborhood to witness her finally handling the Alvarez problem. She didn't know I'd shown Mr. Alvarez how to screen share. We sat in the folding chairs while she ranted about neighborhood character and chronic offenders. Then she opened the floor for comments, sure that people would back her up. Mr. Alvarez stood up. He never spoke at these things. His voice shook a little, but he said, "I would like to show something." He pulled out his old iPad, tapped a few times like I'd shown him, and the TV at the front switched from the agenda to the first clip. Carol, 6:02 a.m., in his yard with a tape measure. Then the one where she moved his trash cans. Then the one where she said she wanted to push him out. Dead. Silence. Carol sputtered. "You can't record me without my—" "Our state is one-party consent," I said. "And you're on his property." Several neighbors who'd also been harassed started speaking up. She fined me for having my grandkids' bikes in the driveway for an hour. She told my black husband our patio furniture wasn't in keeping with the neighborhood. It dominoed. The board called a closed-door session on the spot. 10 minutes later, they announced Carol was being removed as president, pending a formal vote and review of her actions. Someone else would act as interim. The best part? A clip of her saying, "I run this place. They'll do whatever I say," leaked from someone's phone recording of the meeting and made its way onto the local neighborhood Facebook group. By the weekend, she'd resigned for personal reasons. When we walked home, Mr. Alvarez patted my shoulder and said, I've been quiet my whole life to avoid trouble. Didn't know it could feel this good to make some. The bully who weaponized the rulebook got taken down by the one neighbor she assumed would stay in his lane. The old man who finally spoke up, with a nerd as his backup. Story 6. My Aunt Lisa made my childhood hell. I was the sensitive one, so she treated me like a chew toy. Comments about my weight, my weird hobbies, how I'd never leave this town. At every holiday, she'd find a way to humiliate me in front of cousins. If I pushed back even a little, she'd clutch her pearls and say, "Wow, you really can't take a joke like your sister can." The only place I ever felt safe was at Grandma June's house. She'd make tea, let me vent, and then quietly say, "People tell you who they are if you listen long enough." When Grandma died, Lisa turned into a dictator. She planned the funeral, picked the flowers, even chose who should speak. I was not on that list. She told me, "You're too emotional, honey. You'll make it about you." The morning of the funeral, the pastor asked if anyone wanted to add a few words at the end. Lisa shot me a warning look from the front row. My hands were shaking, but I stood up anyway. I talked about Grandma's garden, the way she'd sneak extra cookies into my backpack, how she never once mocked me for crying over silly things. Then my voice got steady. "And she taught me something important," I said. "That love never sounds like, 'You're pathetic,' or 'No one will ever want you if you don't lose weight,' or 'You should be grateful anyone tolerates you.'" You could feel the temperature drop. Those were Lisa's greatest hits, verbatim. A couple of cousins looked straight at her. "I heard those words a lot in this family," I continued, "but never from her. Grandma spent years trying to undo that damage. She told me, 'One day, you'll realize it was never about you being unlovable. It was about them being cruel.'" I just wanted to say, I finally believe her. I sat down. Lisa's face was radioactive. After the service, she cornered me in the hallway. "How dare you imply that was me?" she hissed. "Everyone knows who you meant." Before I could answer, the lawyer handling Grandma's estate walked up. "Since most of the immediate family is here, we're going to read a short statement your grandmother left with her will," he said. "She asked that it be read in front of anyone who loved me enough to show up." We all gathered in a side room, folding chairs and bad coffee. He unfolded a single-page letter and read, "I leave the house to my granddaughter, the one who was always told she was too sensitive. She knows what real love sounds like. I do not want my home to belong to anyone who used my name as an excuse to hurt others." He didn't say Lisa's name. He didn't have to. Lisa opened her mouth, then shut it. For once, there was nothing she could twist, nothing she could spin. The bully who mocked me for being too sensitive lost the only thing she really cared about in front of the entire family, with my oversensitivity as the reason written in our grandmother's own shaky hand. Story 7. I was the assistant coach for a U14 boys soccer team. Official title, volunteer. Real title, guy who tried to protect the kids from Coach Miller. Miller liked to call it old-school discipline. I called it humiliation with a whistle. He'd scream at kids for missing passes, make them run until they puked, call them soft or useless if they flinched. Parents complained. The club kept him because he wins. His favorite target was Owen, a quiet kid with asthma and ridiculous footwork. That kid could weave through 5 defenders like nothing. But if he got tired and asked to sub, Miller would sneer, "Maybe take up chess, princess." I'd argue with him on the sideline. "He's red in the face. He needs a break. He needs to toughen up," he'd bark. "You're making them weak." The final straw was the championship game. Scouts were in the stands. Parents packed the sidelines. Owen started strong, assisting the first goal. Then, midway through the second half, he took a hard hit and went down. He got up slow, breathing weird. He jogged over and said, "Coach, I can't catch my breath. I need my inhaler." Before I could move, Miller grabbed his jersey and yanked him closer. "You're not sitting out in front of scouts because you're scared," he snarled, loud enough for the front rows to hear. "Get back out there or find another team." Owen's eyes filled. He nodded, turned to step back on the field, then stopped. He looked over at me, then at his mom in the stands. She was already halfway down the bleachers, face white. And then, very quietly, he said, "No." You could have heard a pin drop. Miller barked, "What did you say to me?" Owen's voice shook, but he kept going. "You're not a good coach. You just yell. I don't feel safe with you." He turned to the ref. "I'm subbing out." Miller lunged like he was going to grab him again. I stepped between them and put a hand on his chest. "Touch him and I swear to God." Owen walked to the bench and sat down. For a second, everything held its breath. Then one of the defenders pulled off his jersey and walked over. "If he's out, I'm out." Then another. And another. In less than a minute, every kid had walked off the field and lined up behind Owen on the bench, jerseys in their hands. The ref blew the whistle, confused, looking to us. The other team's coach tried not to stare. Miller screeched about quitting and throwing away your shot, but it was just noise now. Parents were already filming. One of the board members, who'd ignored complaints for years, suddenly found his feet and walked over with his lips pressed tight. We forfeited the championship. The league suspended Miller pending investigation 2 days later, but he never came back. Officially, it was because of multiple substantiated complaints. Really, it was because his players made winning less important than not being abused. At the end of season barbecue, we threw ourselves. Owen came up to me and said, "I thought if I said anything, everyone would hate me." I nodded at the group of boys cannonballing into the pool together, laughing. Looks like they were just waiting for you to go first. Story 8. I worked front of house at a trendy bistro run by a guy named Trent. He was one of those fake charming managers, smooth with customers, a terror in the kitchen. If a plate came back wrong, he'd berate whoever was closest. He loved doing it in front of staff so everyone learned the lesson. He'd call servers idiots, mock our accents, tell us how replaceable we were. His favorite target was Min, our busser. Min was quiet, always early, barely spoke English when he started. Trent decided that made him fair game. "Hey, dish boy, faster," he'd snap, clapping his hands in Min's face. Restaurants in your country must be slow as hell. Min would just lower his head and move faster. We also all knew, quietly, that Trent was skimming. Our credit card tips never quite matched the slips. If anyone asked, he'd say, "Processing fees, sweetheart. Learn how taxes work." One Saturday, we had a huge influencer birthday party booked. The owner actually showed up, which never happened. Trent was in full fake smile mode. During the rush, a server mixed up allergy notes. The kitchen caught it before it left the pass, but Trent went nuclear anyway. He stormed out, grabbed the ticket, and started screaming. "This is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Are you trying to shut us down?" He smashed the ticket down, sending a fork clattering to the floor. Min, who'd been clearing nearby, flinched so hard he dropped an entire tub of glasses. They shattered everywhere. Everyone froze. Trent rounded on him. "Are you kidding me? That's coming out of your check, you useless." And then Min did something I had never seen him do. He straightened up. His hands were shaking, but he looked Trent dead in the eye. "No," he said. "Just that." Trent blinked. "Excuse me?" Min took a breath. "No. You already take our money." The entire room went still. Even the sizzle from the grill felt quieter. The birthday party at table 12 stopped mid-laugh, watching. Min walked over to the POS, pulled out a crumpled notebook and slapped it onto the bar. He'd been quietly writing down every tip discrepancy for months. Date, table, slip amount, what we actually got. "You steal," he said, voice getting stronger. "Every night." "I check," I add. The owner, who'd been sipping wine at the corner of the bar, stood up so fast his stool scraped. "Show me," he said. We all crowded around as Min flipped through pages of neat columns. The owner compared them with the digital reports on the office tablet. His face went from confused to grim. "You're mistaken," Trent tried. "He doesn't understand the system. He can barely—" The owner cut him off. "Funny, the system seems to short everyone but you. Every single time." He turned to the birthday table, who were filming all of this because of course they were. "I'm so sorry you had to see that," he said politely. "Your meal is on the house, and so is everyone's here tonight." Then he looked at Trent. "Get out of my restaurant." Trent sputtered. "You can't fire me in front of customers." The owner raised his voice just enough for the whole dining room. "I'm not firing you in front of customers. I'm firing you in front of the people whose money you stole and whose staff you abused." Trent grabbed his coat and stormed out, muttering about lawyers. The door swung shut behind him to a soft wave of applause that started at table 12 and spread. Later, when we were rolling silverware in the quiet, Min sat next to me and said, almost shyly, "I thought my English too bad. Maybe no one listened." I nudged his notebook toward him. "Turns out you spoke the only language Trent actually cares about," I said. Numbers. Story 9. My older sister, Kira, is a fitness influencer. Online, she's body positive, always talking about lifting other women up, all that. At home growing up, she called me the before picture. If I ate dessert, she'd film me and joke about portion control. When I cried, she'd roll her eyes and say, "If you can't handle your own sister teasing you, how will you handle the real world?" Our parents thought it was sister banter. As her following grew, so did the cruelty. She'd insist I be in her videos as proof that her lifestyle works, then compare my body to hers in the captions. If I refused, she'd rage about how ungrateful I was for the exposure. I finally moved out, blocked her on everything, and worked on just existing without hating myself. Last year, she launched a paid Glow Camp program and did weekly live stream Q&As. My cousin sent me a link to one saying, "She's talking about you again." I joined anonymously. Kira was in full branded mode, ring light and fake laugh. Someone asked in the chat, "What do you do about unsupportive family?" She sighed dramatically. "Honestly, I had to cut off my sister. She refused to take her health seriously, kept body-shaming me for being disciplined. Some people just want to stay victims." I actually laughed. Out loud. Then something in me, this tired part that had been quiet for years, sat up. I typed, "Did she ask to be in your videos or did you use her without consent?" The chat exploded. Kira frowned at her screen. "We've got a hater in here," she said, smiling tight. "Probably my sister on a burner, honestly." "Hi, Nia." She gave a fake little wave. "Fine," I thought. "Hi, Nia," I typed. "Long time." The chat moved so fast she almost missed it. Then her eyes flicked to the username she hadn't seen in a year. Mine. Her smile faltered. "Nia," she said, still lived to 3,000 people. "This isn't really the place." "This is exactly the place," I wrote. "You've made content out of my body since we were teenagers. You posted me in a bikini without asking and called it a wake-up call. You told your followers I was proof that self-love alone doesn't work when I was in therapy for an eating disorder." The comments went from "OMG drama" to "wait what?" to "this isn't okay" in seconds. Kira's face flushed blotchy red. "You know I love you," she said, voice going high. "You're twisting things." I kept going. "Tell them about the GLP-1 injections you hide in the vitamin drawer, or how you edit your waist in Facetune while preaching no filters." Silence. You could see the gears turning behind her eyes, looking for an angle. Instead of answering, she clicked something on her screen. The stream cut. Just like that. What she didn't realize is that one of her Glow Camp stands had screen recorded the whole exchange and posted it to TikTok with the caption, "When the body-positive influencer's sister pulls receipts." Brands started quietly backing away. Comment sections turned. Listen Tanya trended in her little corner of the internet for a day. She texted me once, a wall of rage about ruining her career and airing private stuff. I stared at it for a long time. Then I wrote back exactly one sentence. "You turned my body into your content without asking. I finally turned your behavior into mine." She hasn't messaged since. Her follower count is still bigger than I'll ever be. But for the first time in my life, her voice isn't louder than mine. At least not in my own head. Story 10. In grad school, everyone knew Dr. Halpern. Brilliant. Published everywhere. Invited keynote speaker. Also, a bully with tenure. He'd tear apart students in seminars, call ideas embarrassingly naive, make sexist jokes, pit mentees against each other. If you complained, older faculty would shrug. He's tough, but he makes careers. He didn't make mine. I dropped out after 2 years of being told I was not serious material. I left his lab with a shredded self-esteem and a half-finished thesis. His favorite target, though, was Sam. Sam was meticulous, thoughtful, the kind of guy who double-checked sources for fun. Halpern latched onto him early. At first, it looked like mentorship. Then, it turned into ownership. "If you're in my lab, you're my reputation," Halpern would say. "Don't embarrass me." He'd make Sam redo experiments 3-4 times for practice. He'd scream at him in front of undergrads. He joked about how Sam would never survive in academia without him. Sam stayed. Because what else do you do when your whole career is tied to one man's recommendation letter? Fast forward 10 years. I'd left academia, patched myself together, and was working in industry when I got an email, an invitation to Halpern's retirement party. I almost deleted it out of habit. Then I saw the CC list. Half our old cohort, including Sam. Curiosity won. The party was in a fancy hall on campus, catered, with a slideshow of Halpern shaking hands with important people. He basked in it. Former students gave speeches about his rigor and high standards. No one mentioned the tears in bathroom stalls. Then, the department chair announced a special tribute from one of Dr. Halpern's most dedicated mentees. Sam walked up to the podium. He looked older, obviously, but there was something different. Straight shoulders, steady eyes, not the hunched, apologetic posture I remembered. He started with the usual, thanked Halpern for opportunities, listed the grants they'd won. Everyone relaxed. Then he paused. "And there's another story," he said. "It's one I haven't told publicly before because I was afraid. But I think a retirement party is the perfect time." The room shifted, like it leaned in. Sam took a folder from his bag and held it up. "This is a copy of the letter your own mentor, Dr. Weiss, wrote to the university about you in 1989, he said, looking straight at Halpern. "She warned them that your motivational style crossed into humiliation, that you took credit for students' work, that you retaliated when challenged. The university filed it. And did nothing. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I found it by accident last year in the archives when I was researching departmental history, Sam went on. Reading it was like reading my own diary. He read a line from the letter, then a line from his own emails, sent to himself at 3 a.m. during grad school to document incidents. The parallels were sickening. Halpern tried to laugh it off. Oh, come on, we all know Weiss was dramatic. Sam didn't raise his voice. You told me the same thing when I said your yelling was affecting my health. You said, if you don't like it, there's the door. So today, I wanted you to hear this from someone who walked through it and survived. He turned to the audience. If you were ever told you weren't cut out for this because you didn't respond well to being degraded, that was a lie. You were cut out just fine. The system decided he was worth more than you. The chair looked like she wanted to melt into her shoes. Younger faculty looked furious. One of the university's diversity officers I recognized from LinkedIn was quietly taking notes. Halpern opened his mouth, closed it. For once, he wasn't the smartest man in the room. He was the subject. There was no dramatic firing on the spot. He was already retiring. But something in that room shifted. The polite applause at the end of his distinguished career speech was thin and awkward. People who'd planned to gush about him in their own remarks cut their comments short or changed the subject. As we left, I overheard the dean mutter, "We'll have to review that archive." In the hallway afterward, I caught up with Sam. "I can't believe you did that," I said. He smiled, tired but light. "I used to think staying quiet was professional," he said. Then I realized the only people silence protects are the ones who never deserved our respect in the first place. The man who'd built a career on footnotes and citations got his legacy footnoted by the student he tried hardest to break. The moment that student finally, calmly, added the truth to the record. Story 11, I grew up in a small-town church where our youth leader, Brother Mark, was basically a celebrity. Parents loved him, pastors adored him. Older folks called him a real man of God. To us, he was a tyrant with a Bible. He'd roast kids for what they wore. Girls with ripped jeans were temptresses. Boys with long hair were confused. His favorite target was Eli, this soft-spoken kid who played piano like a literal angel and sometimes painted his nails black. Mark called it corrective teasing. Things like, real men don't wear jewelry on their hands unless they earned a ring. Or, maybe if you sang louder instead of sounding like a girl, God would hear you. Eli would laugh it off, then sit in the back of the bus and stare out the window. When the church hired a new head pastor, they announced a big youth takeover Sunday. The teens would run the whole service, music, testimonies, everything. Mark was thrilled. We'll show them what strong, obedient youth look like. I was on the soundboard. My whole job, mute and unmute mics. Mid-service, pastor says. Before the final song, Eli will share a short testimony about what this youth group has meant to him. Mark hadn't planned that. I saw his jaw tighten. Eli stepped up to the pulpit, hands shaking. Mark leaned over to me in the sound booth and hissed, "If he goes off script on some pity party, cut his mic." He didn't realize the channel I had open went to the lobby speakers too, and the recording feed, and pastor's in-ear monitor. So when he added, low and nasty, "Last thing we need is him confusing the younger boys," it went everywhere. Eli heard it from the stage. His back stiffened. I looked at the board, at the pastor, at Eli, and I just didn't hit mute. Eli took a breath into the mic. "Actually," he said, voice echoing, "this is exactly what I was going to talk about." He looked straight at Mark. "I've been told, in this very church, that the way I talk, the way I dress, the way I play piano is too feminine, and that it makes God disappointed, that I'm confusing the other boys, that if I don't change, I should leave." People shifted in the pews. A couple of moms turned to glare at Mark. Eli kept going, voice shaking but clear. "But I talked to Pastor James this week, and he said God's not the one saying those things. People are, one person mostly." He looked right at Mark again. "So I just want to say, in front of everyone, I'm not confused, I'm not broken, and I'm not leaving." You could feel the whole room hold its breath. Then Pastor James walked up, put a hand on Eli's shoulder, and spoke into his own mic. "For the record," he said, "if anyone told you those things, they are the ones out of line with this church's values, and Christ's." All eyes swung to Mark. He tried to laugh it off, red-faced. "Kids exaggerate," Pastor cut him off. "I heard you myself, Brother Mark. So did half the lobby." Someone in the back actually said, "Wow," under their breath. By the next week, Mark had voluntarily stepped down from youth ministry to focus on his own spiritual growth. Translation: he got benched. Parents demanded a meeting. Stories poured out. Other kids, other jokes, other scars. Eli stayed on the worship team. He painted his nails bright blue for the next Sunday. Pastor James complimented them. on mic. The man who preached that God hated boys like him got exposed by a single live sentence he thought no one would hear, and by the kid he'd been trying to push out of the building. Story 12. I was an RA in a leadership dorm at my university, which basically meant half rich kids padding resumes and half scholarship kids praying their GPA stayed high enough. My main problem wasn't alcohol or noise. It was Lauren. Lauren was the kind of girl who called everyone babe and meant it as an insult. Her parents donated a study lounge, so she thought the floor was her kingdom. She'd sneer at thrifted clothes, mock people's majors, loudly ask who was on actual scholarship at meetings, always with a smile so it sounded like a joke. Her favorite target was Danny, a first-gen student who worked nights at the campus dining hall. Tiny, always tired, always apologizing. She kept ramen and off-brand chips stacked under her bed because she didn't have a meal plan. Lauren would joke about it constantly. Wow, Danny, you know those have microplastics, right? Must be nice not worrying about student loans since the government just pays for you. She once posted a TikTok of Danny studying in her uniform with the caption, "Live footage of the American dream. Work, school, repeat." I pulled Lauren aside more than once. Warnings, hall write-ups, community conversations. She'd cry, swear she'd do better, then go right back to it. Mid-semester, the resident director asked me to host a floor community circle after multiple anonymous complaints. The prompt was simple. One thing that makes you feel unsafe or small here. We sat on the lounge floor in a circle, passing a bag of chips as a talking piece. Very RA, I know. When it got to Danny, I honestly expected her to pass. She stared at the bag for a long time. Then she said softly, "I'm tired of feeling like my poverty is a punchline." She didn't look at Lauren, but everyone did. Danny went on, "I'm on a scholarship, yeah. I clean the dining hall till midnight. Then I study until 3. I send money home. I don't have parents who can bail me out if I fail, or donate a lounge if I make trouble. So when someone says the government pays for me or calls me charity, it makes me feel like I don't belong in the building I clean." Her voice cracked on that last word, clean. The room was dead quiet. Then she added, "And I know the person doing it thinks it's just jokes because the scholarship office told me she's on the same needs-based grant I am." Every head whipped to Lauren. Lauren went sheet white. "That's not... I have merit scholarships." Danny shook her head. "They called me last week to see if I knew anything about you working, because they couldn't verify your employment. You told them you work 10 hours a week as a student assistant in our hall, right?" She looked at me. "But she doesn't. I've never seen her do a desk shift." I felt my stomach drop. I was the one who scheduled desk shifts. And yeah, Lauren had mysteriously never been available. The RD cleared his throat. "We'll talk about that privately," he said. But the room had already got the message. Within a month, Lauren was gone. Rumor was she withdrew for personal reasons. But we all knew her aid package collapsed once the work angle fell apart. Her parents could have paid full freight. They didn't. On her last day, she passed Danny in the hallway dragging a suitcase. She opened her mouth like she might apologize. Danny just moved her cart of cleaning supplies aside and said, very calmly, "Good luck paying for your own chips." The girl who mocked a scholarship kid for being charity lost the one thing keeping her there the moment that charity case, calmly, publicly, told the truth. Story 13. Basic training is designed to break you down, sure. But our drill sergeant, Staff Sergeant Keene, didn't see a line between toughening up and just being cruel. He'd single out one guy every cycle to be his chew toy. In our platoon, that was Reyes. Reyes was older than most of us. Late 20s, prior EMT, joined for the benefits for his kid. He was quieter, more thoughtful. That was enough. Keene called him grandpa and deadweight. Made him low-crawl extra, dump his locker and refold everything 10 times. Once, when Reyes's knee gave out on a run and he limped in last, Keene made him stand at attention in front of the formation while he went off. "If your broke-down civilian body can't handle this, go home to your diaper brigade," he snarled. "You're dragging my platoon down." We all stared straight ahead, eyes front like we were supposed to. That's how it works. You keep your head down and hope you're not next. Then the Inspector General announced a surprise visit. Some colonel with clipboards, doing the whole "we care about trainee welfare" song and dance. Everyone got the briefing. Answer honestly, but respectfully. Chain of command, blah blah. The colonel came through the barracks asking questions, checking bunks. Keene pasted on this respectful, gravelly-voiced professionalism that would have made recruiting posters jealous. "How's morale, troops?" the colonel asked, walking down the line. "Hi, sir," we barked. He stopped in front of Reyes. "And you, son?" Reyes looked like he was going to give the standard answer. You could see the war inside him. Survival instinct versus something else. His jaw clenched. Then he said, clearly, "Sir, permission to speak freely about Staff Sergeant Keen's training methods." The air left the room. Keen's head whipped around. "Reyes, you watch your—" The colonel held up a hand. "I did say honestly, Sergeant." Reyes swallowed. "Yes, sir. Honestly, I am concerned some of his methods are hazing, not training. He's targeted me repeatedly in ways that don't make sense for discipline." He listed examples, voice shaking but steady. The extra punishments, the public mocking, the time Keen forgot his inhaler on a forced march, even though Reyes's medical file flagged mild asthma. Then he dropped the bomb. "And I have documentation, sir. Dates, times. I started writing them down in my pocket notebook because I was worried if I reported it, no one would believe me." He pulled a small, sweat-creased notebook from his cargo pocket and held it out. All of us stared straight ahead harder than we ever had. No one moved. No one said a word. The colonel took the notebook, flipped through it. His face got tighter with each page. Then he turned to Keen. "Sergeant, we'll be having a separate conversation," he said, voice like ice. Keen went purple. "Sir, with respect, this recruit is just weak. He's trying to—" "You just heard him," the colonel cut in. "He followed instructions. He documented. That's more discipline than I'm seeing from you right now." The rest of that day was weird. Keen was yanked out for meetings. Another drill sergeant stepped in, clearly furious, but not at us. By the next week, Keen was reassigned pending investigation. Word travels fast on base. We heard later he'd lost his position as a trainer entirely. On graduation day, Reyes's kid was there, tiny hand clutching a flag. As we tossed our caps, I heard another drill sergeant clap him on the shoulder and say, "Took guts, what you did. That's the kind of backbone we actually need." The man who tried to break him in the name of discipline got broken by the very thing he claimed to enforce. A soldier with the courage to report up the chain in front of everyone, when it counted. Story 14. I'm a counselor at an outpatient rehab. Group therapy is messy, raw, sometimes darkly funny. But the one thing it's supposed to be is safe. Rick almost ruined that. He was what we call an old-timer. Been sober 6 years, sponsored half the town, loved being the guy with the answers. He'd interrupt newer members, correct their language, tell them they weren't really sober if they took antidepressants. It was bullying dressed up as tough love. His main target was Jamie, a 23-year-old who'd relapsed twice and hated herself for it. Soft voice, sleeves always tugged down, eyes on the floor. Every time she admitted a craving, Rick would pounce. "Are you done yet?" he'd say. "Or do you need to lose a few more things before you take this seriously? Maybe your teeth next time, huh?" I pulled him aside, reminded him of group rules. He shrugged. If she can't handle reality, she'll die out there. I considered booting him. But he did help people sometimes. They trusted him. I kept thinking maybe I could redirect that energy. One night, we were doing chip night, handing out tokens for lengths of sobriety. It's usually emotional in a good way. Jamie had 30 days again. She'd been terrified to even ask for a chip. When her turn came, she stood up shaking. "Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm an addict," she said. "I have 30 days clean." Everyone clapped. I saw Rick roll his eyes. Jamie took the chip, then looked at it for a long time. Then she turned to Rick. "And," she said, voice suddenly steady, "I want to give this back to you." The room went dead quiet. Rick laughed. "What, you think I need a 30-day chip, kid?" Jamie nodded. "Yeah, I do." She looked at me. "Is it okay if I share something out of order?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Go ahead." She looked back at Rick. "You were my sponsor before I came here," she said. "Last year, you told me if I relapsed, you'd drop me because you don't waste time on quitters. So I didn't call you when I overdosed. My mom found me." People shifted in their seats, eyes widening. Jamie kept going. "When I got out of the hospital, I followed you to a meeting because I wanted to apologize. I saw you in the parking lot." Her hands were shaking, but her voice wasn't. "You were leaning against your car, with a bottle, drinking from a paper bag." The air got vacuum silent. Rick's face went ashy. "You're misremembering. I stood there for 10 minutes, Jamie said. "I counted. I watched you take at least 6 sips. Then you went inside and took a 6-year chip and told everyone you'd never slipped once." She looked around the circle. I thought, if he can fake it, maybe everyone does. Maybe I'm the only one who can't. Rick tried to stand. I put a hand up. "Sit," I said quietly. Jamie set the 30-day chip on the coffee table between us. "So here," she said. "Since you're starting over anyway, you can have mine. If you want to be honest this time." No one moved. No one spoke. Rick's eyes filled, not with anger, but panic. The toughest guy in the room looked suddenly very small. "You don't know what you saw," he whispered. An older woman across the circle, who'd been quiet all night, spoke up. "I do," she said. "I saw you at the liquor store last month. You told me you were buying it for a friend." We ended the group early. I pulled Rick aside, told him he couldn't come back as long as he was lying about his sobriety. He raged, then crumpled, then finally admitted he'd been drinking only weekends for almost a year. He checked into inpatient the next day, this time as a patient, not a savior. Jamie kept her replacement chip. 60 days, then 90. On her 6th month, she shared again. "The day I stopped wanting to die," she said, "was the day I realized the person tearing me down was more lost than I was. The man who lorded his perfect sobriety over everyone got forced to start at day 1 by the girl he'd called a hopeless case." Story 15. I wrote a play in my mid-20s. Nothing huge, just a small, weird comedy about grief and grocery stores. I shared it in a workshop at our local community theater. People laughed in the right places. I went home feeling like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't delusional. Then our director, Colin, took me aside. "Great voice, kid," he said, clapping my shoulder a little too hard. "Needs structure, though. Let me help. You're not quite ready." Help turned into him, losing my drafts, canceling meetings, and suggesting I sit in on rehearsals for experience instead of focusing on my script. He'd make snide comments in front of the cast. "Writing is harder than she thought. Not everyone's cut out for it." I believed him. Slowly, I stopped bringing new pages. A year later, the theater announces their new season. Headliner: an original work by our very own artistic director. I flipped open the brochure. The logline? A dark comedy about grief. Set in a grocery store. My stomach dropped. I went to opening night because I honestly thought I was overreacting. Maybe it was just similar. Ideas are ideas, right? Then the lights went down, and my words walked onto the stage. Not all of them. He'd changed scenes, mashed characters together. But whole chunks were verbatim from workshop drafts I'd only ever given to him, and a handful of actors. My weird metaphors, my offbeat monologues, my ending. The audience loved it. As the curtain call approached, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely clap. When Colin came out for his bow, they gave him a standing ovation. "Genius," someone behind me said. They announced a talkback after the show. "Stay and ask the playwright about his process." I should have left. I stayed. The talkback was in the first few rows, maybe 50 people. Colin sat center stage, basking, talking about his inspiration and years of gestation. When they opened it to audience questions, my hand went up before my brain caught up. They called on me. "Yeah," I said, standing, voice weirdly calm. "I'm wondering about your drafting process. Specifically how you went from notes on an unpaid writer's workshop script to this." The room shifted. Colin blinked. "I don't follow?" I took a folded stack of paper from my bag. "These are my original pages from the workshop 2 years ago," I said. "Notice anything familiar?" I read a short monologue. The one about how grief feels like shopping with a list written in someone else's handwriting. People glanced at the stage. It was word for word what the lead actress had just performed. Colin laughed nervously. "Theater is a collaborative medium. Ideas." "Sure," I said. "But collaboration usually involves credit. And consent." I looked at the lead actress. "Did you know the scene where your character tapes receipts to the ceiling came from a workshop draft he told me was too precious?" She looked sick. "No," she said quietly. An older actor stood up. "Wait," he said. "I read that draft. At the workshop. It was hers." Murmurs turned into actual talking. Someone pulled out their phone, scrolling my old blog where I'd posted an early version of the opening scene. Timestamp a year before Colin's alleged breakthrough residency that he just bragged about. The board president, sitting in the front row, looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her. "Colin," she said slowly, "we should have a conversation in private." I shrugged. "Or we can have it here," I said. "In front of the volunteers whose work you've built your genius on." He sputtered something about inspiration, not theft. But it didn't matter. The spell was broken. People weren't seeing a tortured artist anymore. They were seeing a petty man who stole from a young writer and convinced her she wasn't ready. The brutal part wasn't that he got fired, though he did, a month later, after the board quietly settled with me and scrubbed his name from the posters. The brutal part was smaller, pettier, and somehow perfect. The next season, they staged the play again. Same cast, same grocery store set. But when the programs came out, under written by, his name was gone. Mine was there instead. And during curtain call, the applause that used to be for him washed over me while he stood at the back of the house. Just another guy in a folding seat, watching the words he'd tried to take finally come out of the right mouth.